Hey guys, and welcome back to my little creative corner here on YouTube. So yesterday someone left a comment under one of my past scarf videos asking for a scarf pattern for a child. And so I thought the simple answer to that honestly would be you could use any pattern that you would for an adult, but just make it smaller. But then I thought, that's not an extensive enough answer really, because kids come in all sizes, all different heights. And so I thought, well, what is the answer to that? So I did a little bit of research on it because I wanted it to be a little bit more thorough. I think it's good information. Now, when I made scarves for my child in the past, I was just kind of like working out the length, testing it on them depending on what age they were at the time, and just being like, okay, that looks like it'll be a good length and width. And that's not very scientific. If you don't have the child in front of you to do that with, then you're kind of left like, but what size should I make? So hopefully I can answer that question for you today. So as I was doing my research, I found several size charts. I'm going to share some of them with you. And they all are very similar to each other, but they all have tiny little differences, like within about a half an inch or an inch of each other. So yeah, that's also not very helpful. Also, the one, I thought it was interesting how you can actually measure the length of your scarf with your arm span. I think I'm going to try that actually with one of my scarves. Okay, so this is one that I recently made, and let's see. Oh, yeah, that actually works. So there's my hand. I don't know how far back I'd have to get. Yeah, so that actually works. So that gives you kind of an idea of like how long that scarf is. Now I do like them to come down a little further. Voila, voila. I think I did this one in a video actually. I'll have to see, and if I did, I'll tag it. But I like when you can wrap them around, make them a little longer, and I think that's the best option for kids too, is if they can wrap them around. Otherwise they're gonna get lost. And so the other thing they were saying on that, let me close this before my cat climbs in, is that the width, oh, look at that. The width should be about the size of whoever's hand. Hello. Okay, there we go. About the width of whoever's hand when it's stretched out. So that actually does work. Okay, so that's interesting. So that's kind of cool. So again, if you have the person in front of you, which I think is a really cool way to do it, because I'm a very tall person, and so that does make a difference. I mean, I'll wear shorter scarves as well, and I've made some for myself. But I do like a long scarf, and I like them kind of chunky sometimes too. I feel like it's comforting. So that's interesting to know. So if you have the person in front of you, that's a good way to measure the length and the width. I learned something new. But again, if you don't have that person in front of you, what are some good general guidelines? So I'm going to post the chart that I'm referencing up here, the charts that I'm referencing, and they're just random charts that I found when I did a Google search. I'll reference the creators of them as well in the comments and so on, and I'll leave this in the comments, or not in the comments, in the description as well. But basically, so the first chart, it also kind of shows like the wingspan, the wingspan and the hand width thing, which is kind of cool. But then they recommend for like ages 4 to 5, basically anywhere between 3 to 4.5 inches wide and 36 to 40 inches long. And then for ages 6 to 10, anywhere from 4 to 6 inches, and I think they actually got one of those reversed, so I'll put a little arrow on that because I was like, what? So anywhere from 4 to 6 inches wide and anywhere from 50 to 60 inches long. So I think that really depends on the height of the child, and also personal preference, I think. But you know, I don't know how much personal preference some kids would have. I know some kids definitely, especially if there are sensory things involved, will want things to be more specific. So something to keep in mind, but that's very, very personal. And so, you know, you would know that, right? Little photo bomber. Are you gonna cause trouble? Okay, so, and then for adults, it just says adults anywhere from 6 to 12 inches wide if you want like a really wide scarf, and 40 to up to 120 inches long. So, you know, ultimately it becomes very personalized. But when we're talking about making something for kids, I actually played around with a couple of different types of yarn yesterday, so I will flip these around and show these to you guys, and show you, oh, whoops, I just unraveled that one a little bit. I didn't realize I hadn't finished it. That's what happens when you're doing things late at night. And I will show you guys the pattern that I came up with, because I think it's just a nice flexible pattern. It's super easy. It's just a double crocheting and a half double crochet. I'm reattaching this now. And so let me flip you around and show you that. So this is the first yarn that I used, and it's about a 4-weight yarn, and I used a 5mm crochet hook on it. And you can see where it really is kind of stretchy. Just using this pattern with the half double and double crochets, it gives it a little give, but those half double crochets keep it from feeling sort of too loose and too airy. And it just gives it a nice stretch, right? So I like that idea for a kid's scarf because, you know, I think a lot of times kids don't want to feel too confined. So I also used this wool yarn that I had at home, and I thought I would try it with a thicker yarn that's a little warmer. And even with this pattern, this wool yarn that you can see is much thicker, and a little more coarse. It still has that nice stretchy wibble wobble kind of feel to it, which makes it a little more comfortable, right? So I'm going to show you guys this pattern with a similar kind of yarn. It's actually, I think it's the same brand and the same yarn, but just a different color. One more thing that I wanted to share before we get started on the pattern. I did these 2 different sizes. Now you can see my hand. I did use a tape measure. Instead of counting rows, I did a tape measure, and these are both about 36 inches long. And then this one, I wanted to see kind of the difference of how it would look. And this one is almost, it's just almost 4 inches. And then this one is at 4.5 inches. So I would definitely say the 4-inch for a younger, smaller child, and then maybe the larger for an older child or someone taller, or, you know, it's hard. It's weird to me that they're going by age groups because age is sort of irrelevant. I know my child, when they were a toddler, were very large, like not large, but like tall for a toddler compared to some of their preschool friends. And then there was a preschooler in their class that was taller than they were. So it just really varies. But you can see very small, little cute scarves. So let's jump into this pattern and be making a scarf. So also, I think I forgot to mention, I used an 8mm hook on this yarn, on this scarf rather, and that was, I just had this in my stash. I was playing around and I grabbed the 8mm, which worked fine. We are using, this is the same brand and everything. This is a wool yarn. It's 80% acrylic, 20% wool, and it's the same yarn, just a different color. And it actually calls for a 9mm hook. So I'm going to use the 9mm hook on it for this demo. So we are going to use our tape measure to decide how long it's going to be, and I'm just going to go with 36 inches. One thing that I wanted to mention as well is, actually maybe we'll do 40 inches just to see how far the yarn goes. One thing I wanted to mention as well, I thought this would be a good project since we're so close to Christmas. Like if you wanted to do a last minute project for someone, a last minute scarf, both of these stitches, the half double and the double crochet, work up really quickly. So yeah, and if you get a nice bulky yarn, it's going to work up even more quickly, which is great. And I liked this because I like that kind of twisty texture and then the variegated colors. So it just adds a little extra, I don't know, zhuzh to your finished project. Okay, so we're going to start with our chain. So let's get our little loop on our hook. So grab that yarn around the back, lift this up, pull that hook underneath, pull that yarn underneath, and voila. So to create our chain, this is also very beginner friendly, very basic stitches, super easy pattern. You can crank this out while you're watching TV. You gotta love it. All right, so let's clear some eye space, some visual space. So for our chain, we're just gonna grab our yarn, yarn over, chain 1. and all the way down the row. So again, I'm just going to create a chain and then test the length of it against my tape measure. And then when we're done, I will also count how many chains I did and how many rows I did in case somebody wants that for reference. If it's just easier for your brain to work that way, I'll add that information like somewhere on the video. So I'm just taking that first knot that we did right up to the edge of the tape measure, and then I'm going to lay it out on my surface nice and flat to make sure it meets up where I want it to at the 40-inch mark. One thing to keep in mind when you're measuring this, like, you definitely want to lay your tape measure flat and then lay your chain flat down on the surface to measure it, because it does want to stretch. The yarn is going to want to stretch a little bit anyway. And so if you're doing this number to see, you know, if it's the right length, and then you let go and it shrinks up, it's like, whoop, you're not going to have an accurate measurement. Okay, so we have our chain done. All right, so now for our first row, we're going to do half double crochets in each chain across. So to half double crochet, we yarn over. We go into our chain, yarn over again, lift it up just ever so gently, yarn over and pull through all three. And then we're just going to keep doing that. Yarn over in the next chain and through all three. And then we just do that all the way down the row. And this is what I mean by, oh, this is chunky. So do you see kind of how that wants to separate a little bit? That's just something to be aware of with these thicker yarns and this wool yarn. So I think it's better to kind of err on the side of working a little looser. I think I was maybe trying to hold it a little too tightly with trying to talk and do this at the same time. So a little on the looser side, so you're not separating that yarn. What was I gonna say? Oh, so you can see how nice, how just on our first row, this is already a nice little chunky bit. So this is why I thought this could be a cool project to do. Again, if you're trying to make some last minute gift ideas, or, you know, or if you need a winter birthday gift idea or some such thing, this is a nice pattern to sort of work up a scarf, a nice scarf that looks lovely, that's not super expensive, and you can just do this in a couple of hours. I think the other one I did in about an hour and a half. The one with this kind of yarn. The other one with the thinner yarn, the lighter weight yarn, I think maybe also only took me just a few hours. With that one, it was hard to tell because I was experimenting with stitches and things, trying to decide what I wanted to do with it. So that one took a little longer. It's hard to tell, but still, either way, it's not the most time-consuming pattern, right? So we're just going to keep going all the way down our row, and I will meet you back at the end. So I'm on my last stitch here. We're going to do our last half double crochet. I'm going to take this, because this is a thick yarn, it kind of wants to loosen. I'm going to tighten that up just a little bit on that corner. So we've got our last half double crochet, and now we're going to chain two. 1, 2, and this is in preparation for our double crochets. Super easy, you guys. So very simple, very simple. I like to keep it simple sometimes. Sometimes. Most of the time, I make things very, very complicated.
So as I was editing, I realized that apparently when I had paused my camera, I had stopped my camera in order to cough. And so the whole part where I did the double crochet down the row is missing. So I really, really apologize for that. If you don't know how to do a double crochet, I will link a quick video for that. So sorry.
Here we are at the end of our second row, and we're going to do our last double crochet into that last stitch. And so now on the end of your double crochet rows, you're only going to chain 1. instead of 2. And that's going to give you that nice straight edge. So then we're just going to turn it around, and we're going to half double crochet into the next stitch, into the first stitch rather, and half double crochet again all the way down the row. So just keep in mind, you're going to do 2 chain, you're going to chain 2 at the end of your half double crochet row. Like going into your double crochet, you're going to chain 2. Going into your half double crochet, you're chaining 1, and you're going all the way down the row. So basically that is the pattern, and you're going to repeat that until you get the width that you want for your scarf. So keeping in mind that we're doing this for kids, the recommended thing for ages 4 to 5, somewhere between 3 to 4.5 inches. Where is my tape measure? So,
oh, there it is. Okay.
Had to stretch. So right now with the 2 rows, we're at about 2 inches. And with that 3rd row, we're getting to about 2.5 inches. So just kind of go by when you want to stop. So just sort of check in. And again, if you're making this for an adult, you would just start with a longer chain, and then you would make it a little bit wider. So I'll meet you back after I finish a couple more rows. So to finish this up, we're just going to take on our last stitch. We're going to yarn over, pull through, and leave a nice long tail, and then cut that tail and keep pulling it through. And to tie in our ends, I'm going to see, I think this needle is too small for this chunky yarn. So I do have this one that I purchased online, and when it came in, I was like, that is way bigger than I thought it was going to be. And I honestly didn't think I was going to use it for anything, but here we are. It's good to be prepared. All right, so we're going to use the big chunky plastic needle. Oh, perfect. And you're just going to weave your ends in. So we're just going to go into a few stitches. Boop. And boop. Sound effects are free. And I always like to go in the other direction as well, just for a little extra security. And then we lift that up and cut that off and let that disappear. Just be careful not to cut your yarn or your fabric. Oh, there we go. Nice, cute, stretchy fabric. So here is the finished kid size scarf. I didn't tie this end in yet because I think I'm actually going to frog this out and use it for another idea, because I like this yarn and I'm not a kid and I don't have a kid to give this to. So anyway, here is our kid size scarf. I actually cannot stretch it on my, which makes sense. I mean, right? The science works. The math works. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope that was helpful. Little scarf action. Sorry, I'm being very, very silly. 'Tis the season for silliness. Apparently, it's getting to be about that time. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I will leave the size charts and references below that I found, and I will also leave the yarn information that I got, this Wool Ease Lion brand yarn, and the color, in case you want to use that or check out their other colors in that line as well. I will do my best to make a few more videos this week and next week while school vacation is happening, in between, you know, all of the holiday things as well. So I hope you guys found that useful, and go make wonderful creative crafts if you need to make some last minute things still. I myself tend to be a last minute person, so no shame. I can relate. Okay. So I will see you soon. Go forth, be crafty and creative, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for being here. Bye-bye.